I love you. Previously on Lost. Oops, I meant green faceless on the couch. Oh well. Hi everybody, welcome back. I am the Green Traveler.
I am the Faceless Leone. This is a podcast about movies and TV. Previously on Green and Faceless, I honestly don't even actually remember what we did.
I think we were dead the whole time.
We were dead? Oh my god.
I only mention that because today we're talking Lost. A huge show back in the mid-2000s, 2004 to 2010. Aired on ABC. Went through a shit ton of reruns. Pissed a lot of people off because of that. So many unanswered questions. Everybody was freaking out, not knowing what was going on. The writer's strike happened. There's a history here. There's a lot to go into. And we're going to go into that today. Some of it. Not all of it. I'm not totally knowledgeable about Lost. I'm mostly opinionated about Lost.
Yeah. Same here. I gotta say, I did not look into much of the background stuff at all when I was refreshing myself. So I think we've mentioned before on the show that each of us have watched this show on numerous occasions.
Yeah, I have shown, I think, 4 people this show and watched it new each time with them. Also, I watched it once by myself and once with my family, so I think I'm on six total viewings of this.
Wow. Yeah, I think I did 3, if not 4.
I don't think
just 3 though.
I will say it's one of my favorite shows of all time, easily.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it warrants being watched 5 or 6 times.
Yeah, I'm not so sure about that either. I think that there's definitely cause to watch it a second time, because you get to watch them set the shit up that is constantly happening to these people.
Yeah. I easily think I could have watched it. And I can still watch it. I have no issues about rewatching it. But, I feel like if I had spread them apart a lot more than I did, it would have been much, I'd feel less opinionated about the film and just enjoy it as much as I do. Because that's the weird part about it, is while I do have some strong opinions about the film, I wholehearatedly love it. It's, easily, as I said, it's easily one of my favorites. But yeah, there's a lot of shit that happens throughout it.
Yes.
It's a roller coaster of weirdness.
Yeah. And to a certain extent, that should be every show, I feel like.
Yeah.
I feel like every show, even if it's just okay, it gets really bad at this point, and you could skip a few episodes. Every show should make you feel like, oh shit, what's going to happen next, to a certain extent. But this definitely cashes in on that effect.
Yeah, they'll set up questions season 1 that you won't find an answer out until season 6, or season 6, the epilogue, which isn't technically part of it, but it's a tiny little short episode that came after everything that answered a few of the unanswered questions that people were still bitching about.
Oh man, have I not watched this?
I showed it to you. It's not a very thrilling episode. It's 5 to 10 minutes long.
Okay.
It only stars Walt, Hurley, and Benjamin Linus, Michael Emerson's character.
Okay.
And they just explain what happened to Walt. They explain what happened to, or how the polar bear was there in the first season, how it was still fed. That is, how it still was alive and everything. And they explained why throughout the show there's little supply drops that happen on the island, which I'm realizing we haven't even set up the show, but they explained why the supply drops were still happening since the company itself was no longer there.
Right. We should explain what the show is. So, Lost is a competition where people get stuck on an island.
Yeah.
And they have to try to survive, and then they vote each other off.
Real life Survivor. But in reality, it's kind of true. That is what it is, just real life Survivor.
At the same time as that show's height, for sure.
Yeah, and it is about Oceanic Flight 815 crashes on a uncharted unlocated island. It was veering. The plane itself was apparently veering off course before then, so the survivors don't know if rescue is on the way. They don't know if rescue knows where they're at. They're doing everything they can to stay positive and hope for rescue, but they're quickly finding out that the island they're stuck on is really fucking weird, and there's a lot of weird shit that's scary and going down, and there's a lot of mystery and intrigue, and dead people are walking about.
And I don't think it's a spoiler to say giant smoke monster.
Yes, indeed. The biggest intrigue for so long. And was the payoff worth it?
I liked it.
I liked it. I liked it initially. There's issues I have with it. Okay. But the show itself, there are, I think, 47 survivors, something like that, on the plane.
Yeah.
And it focuses on like the main 18 of them. So huge fucking cast. And it's a very, very ballsy choice too, to have a giant dramatic show with a massive cast, and yet they pull it off so well because they incorporated something called flashbacks.
Yes.
Where they take a single episode to focus on one character's story, and they do this throughout the first, 4 seasons? I think they did flashbacks for 3 seasons and then flash forwards for 2 seasons. And then they're goofy little flash sideways for the final season.
I think you are right. But
yeah,
at any rate, Lost, I do think the 47 passengers, I do think that does become a problem later on in the show.
And I definitely
think, yeah. And I think that is partially due to the environment the show is written under. I don't think that some of the decisions they make were in the initial plan. I don't think necessarily.
No, I think...
But towards the end, they make it make sense with a certain event in a certain cave. That's awesome.
Yeah, they definitely... I was laughing when he mentioned that because around season 4, season 5, I think is when the writer's strike happened. And that's when, there was budget cuts and they were struggling. They realized, maybe we have too many extras involved. Maybe the 47 passengers is a bit too much, and some people ought to start dying off. And so there's just like mass extinctions on this island.
It's like culling a diseased flock of
cattle. Man. It's so bad.
Yeah.
They'll introduce characters like once or twice, and there'll be extras throughout the whole show, so you'll get to know their face. But like then they'll just die, and you're just like, no, not Carl,
that guy.
It's like not Carl, not maybe it wasn't Carl, maybe it was Kyle, John,
was it Steve?
I don't know, Pablo. Shit.
No, Pablo.
Let's see. I think we've mentioned, the flashbacks are how they develop their characters, not only through their past by explaining how they came to be on the island, but also developing them in the modern day story using those flashbacks. Using that the reminiscing, the characters reminiscing on their past, thinking about their mistakes or how they got to be where they're at, and then using that to overcome their, modern day obstacles that they're facing.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of weird shit on the island. We've mentioned the giant smoke monster that's wrecking havoc in the jungle.
Yeah, you mentioned polar bears.
Polar bears running wild. And eventually, you find out there's others on the island. A native group of, slightly wild beings at first. So you think, just kind of...
They are drenched in mystery and mud.
And they're slowly, picking away at the passengers. You don't know what they're doing, if they're killing them or just kidnapping them or what's going on. But there's so much mystery and intrigue on this island.
Yes, there sure is. So I think, I feel like it's kind of hard to talk about the mystery without, spoiling some things, because they're like, it is a slow reveal, but I want somebody to be able to, watch this and get that slow reveal.
Yeah.
But we could definitely talk about these characters, I think.
I think the characters definitely we can dive into. carefully dive into.
Carefully, yeah.
We'll tip our toes into a few of them.
Yeah, we don't. And you know, I don't know how rampant the fan base for this show is at this late stage in capitalism, but they. I don't want anybody, to send us hate mail about their favorite characters. So yeah, or for spoiling the show.
Yeah, I don't mind if we hate your favorite characters. I don't mind. You can send the hate mail to me. That's fine.
Yeah, that's good. Okay. His address is.
No, I'll just use your hate mail to stoke my fire.
There you go. Yeah, that's the real call of the critic right there.
I will say, the one thing I hear about a lot when you hear about Lost, you hear about the joke we made at the beginning that they were all dead the whole time. You hear that joke.
Yeah.
I will say, for the people who don't know the show and have not watched it, those people are idiots and haven't watched the full show, and got fed up with the reruns and left, only to come back for the finale and did not understand the finale at all. Yeah. So when you hear that joke, just know that they're completely and entirely wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
But don't let that stupid meme stop you from watching this show. But I think diving into the characters, I think there's two very obvious ones to start with. The biggest theme of Lost is science versus faith.
That's true.
And it's represented entirely within their two main characters, Jack Shepherd and John Locke.
Yeah.
Just mix them up Locke. Immediately.
That name might sound familiar if you have no link to the show, but had a perk up in any world history class, or if you ever took a philosophy course. This guy, would you say this John Locke is based off of John Locke, the philosopher?
In name only, really. I mean, there are some very good connections in regards to his philosophy, but I don't know enough about John Locke to make an ass of myself, but I don't feel like he was as faith focused as our John Locke in Lost is.
Yeah, I don't recall him being so. And the most recent thing that I read about John Locke, to be perfectly honest, was that issue of The Sandman, where he's in a French prison. but
right, yeah, it's amazing graphic novel by Neil Gaiman.
Anyways, I feel like at the time I did know a lot more about John Locke, to the point where I was trying to find these connections, but I think several years definitely have passed since that point. So I think that information is gone. So I couldn't really draw too many connections between the Locks, but I thought it was interesting enough to mention. I just wish I had more to say.
Right. It's one of those. I'm gonna immediately forecast that I have most of my opinions regarding Lost come from my opinions regarding Damon Lindelof, and I find him to be kind of a pretentious filmmaker, and this is one of those areas. When you write, a lot of the times when you write, you want your name to be right. You want it to represent the character, so you'll look it up and it's like, what does this mean in a different language? And then it's like, can I use that as my name to, it's a bit pretentious, but that is a style of writing, and I feel like that's one of Damon Lindelof's contributions to Lost is John Locke and Jack Shepherd. Shepherd being, from Psalms 23, the Lord is my shepherd. And that is a very important part of Jack Shepherd's character, is he's a very science-focused, he's a doctor. He doesn't believe in faith. He doesn't really have much ties to God or Christianity. But he is a leader just purely based on who he is. People just turn to him. That becomes very prevalent in the pilot. As a doctor, he's running around trying to save people from the crash after it happens. He's trying to help everybody. And because of just being a doctor and doing what he knew what to do, people immediately just kind of made him the de facto leader.
Yeah.
And he, that is part of his theme as the shepherd. He becomes the shepherd of these survivors.
Sure.
And it kind of pits Locke versus Jack constantly throughout the show. Their beliefs and opinions are always at odds with each other on how to best survive. John Locke's out hunting boar. He's found a new purpose on this island. He kind of wants to stay here after a while because it's given him a new reason, a new reason to live.
Right. He is the faith character for sure.
Yeah. And there's good reason, because you find out that John Locke was paralyzed from the waist down, I believe, before the plane crash. But once the plane crashed, he was able to walk again. He can move his feet, and he got back up and started hunting and started running and started doing everything. There's something about this island.
The audience learns about this before anybody else on the island, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe
we do.
Boone knows. I don't recall.
I guess we should also mention, because they do a great job, John Locke's played by Terry O'Quinn, and Matthew Fox plays Jack Shepherd. And both amazing. Neither one of them my favorite characters, but they are both, up there in my favorites, because the show definitely focuses on them the most. Sure. And I will say, as spoiler free as I can, I don't like the way either of their stories end.
Yeah, I could agree. I would say that Jack's was more satisfying, though I do not mind the twists that they took with John Locke's, because I do like the character at the end in season 6.
Yeah,
that's what I said.
Yeah, I do like where the story goes, definitely.
Right, definitely.
I feel like it's just so upsetting to John Locke's overall development that they've built for. It makes sense. We'll get into it. We'll dive into it. I'm getting too much into two characters. We got so many more to go.
I mean, like you said, they are the main focus, even though there is a lot of focus on these other characters. Their rivalry, that I don't think we quite mentioned that either, is that they do rival for leadership eventually. Yeah. I don't think that's really necessarily John's interest at the beginning of the series, but it definitely shifts there pretty quickly. Just because I looked it up while we were talking, John Locke was known for his letters concerning tolerance, which he wrote after Europe was under a lot of religious wars, and so he was pro-tolerance. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
If he was religious himself, probably. I could not find.
But yeah, John Locke's original interest is just kind of helping everybody survive. He's not looking at leadership, but it definitely becomes more leadership based when he thinks Jack's methods put the survivors at risk. Yeah. And so it kind of becomes who's right, who's wrong. It's just politics, politics among 40 some people on a small island. So it's like Lord of the Flies. If you've read Lord of the Flies, this is the adult version of it.
It is kind of interesting how you transplant people from society. They're going to bring society with them. It won't be the same society, but and I feel like that's kind of just how civilization works.
Yeah, it's like a cancer, man.
Like a cancer.
That's what humanity is. Yeah, that's what we are. We're kind of just like a cancer. And where we go, we enforce our societal laws.
And it mutates as it goes. So,
yeah, let's move on to other characters. Who is your favorite character? I mean, I assume John and Jack are not your favorite.
Go for favorite right away, man. Okay, so I would say that this probably wouldn't be the first picks for a lot of people, but together I love their story, and that is Sun and Jin.
I was really hoping you would go there next.
You were hoping I'd go there next? Okay.
I wanted to talk to your story because I love them.
I love Sun and Jim. So, Sun, I think I said Jim, but it's Jin. Mr.
Jin.
and Mrs. Kwon. They are from Korea. And she is the daughter of a big bad businessman, bully mafia guy. I don't know. And he works for him. And that's a big part of their story, their flashback stories. And I had to reach behind me to find that word. We were just talking about it. But anyways, they met when they were pretty young. They are from two different parts of the society. Her, the upper echelon, and he was the son of a fisherman. Mm-hmm. But they ended up getting together. After a while, though, things turned bad because he is stressed. That's what I'll say.
I think it's okay to say why he was stressed.
Sure. His daddy-in-law made him do some bad things.
Yeah, in order to get his daughter's hand in marriage, he had to commit to basically doing any job his dad asked him to do. And his dad had a much darker side than just Korean businessman.
Yes, definitely. He was his father-in-law's messenger, and the letters he sent were printed in fists. We'll say that.
Yeah, there's a good way to put it.
It gets fucked up sometimes, but anyways, Jin becomes a very angry person because of this, and he starts to resent Sun because he does these horrible things for her, even though he still loves her very much. But she at some point stops seeing that. She thinks he hates her, and because he's verbally abusive, and that's the sad part. Like that, it is a romanticization of an abusive relationship, but in the end, like they go through so much to make it a good relationship in this show.
I would say it's not a romanticization because of an abusive relationship, because it gets cured, because he learns to be a better person throughout the show. Because normally in an abusive relationship, nobody gets better, and it's best to end it. And it certainly probably was best to end it somewhere along the line. If they hadn't come to the island, I would have rooted for her to get out of that relationship.
Oh, definitely. And Sun does stick up for herself. In fact, before they get to the island, she had a plan to get out.
Yeah, I don't know. Once they got away from society, Jin was able to, to not be as controlling. He was able to actually see his actions and realize, he didn't like his actions. So once they were kind of freed from the bond that they had with her father,
right?
He was able to open up and just become a beautiful human being, which he is by the end. He is
definitely my favorite character. He's so noble and willing to sacrifice for Sun. It's good.
And eventually, not even just Sun. Like eventually, he's willing to sacrifice anything for all of his friends.
That's right. Yeah, the island was good for him. So I feel like there's a lot more to say about Sun too. I don't know. I didn't know if I wanted to ruin this or not, but I guess it's not. It's pretty early on. You find out that she knows English, but Jin had no idea she knew English, and he feels betrayed by that. But anyway, she becomes a big part of like the I will say ruling class of the island, because she not only is able to communicate with what's going on to Jin, she is very useful. Like she grows the garden that the islanders feed off of, and he also does fish in the movie. too. So that's kind of cool, like to kind of get like a role that these people start taking in this new society.
Yeah, there's you mentioned the ruling class, and it's kind of like a joke among the extras of the show, because they mentioned that there's a hierarchy that goes on. Jack and his people get to know everything that's going on first before anyone else does. Mm-hmm. And it's hilarious when it's mentioned, but as you just mentioned, also the hierarchy, the people who the main characters, they had roles, they had things they did that were integral to the community. Everybody else just kind of lounged around and read books and didn't really do anything.
I'm sure they did some things off screen that weren't important to the plot, but yes, definitely Sawyer was just sitting around reading books.
Well, he's the one I want to talk about next. Because he's my favorite character. Sawyer is my favorite character, played by Josh Holloway. We should mention also Sun Hwa Kwon. Sun is played by Yoonjin Kim, and Jin Soo Kwon is played by Daniel Dae Kim. Daniel Dae Kim has been in the new Hawaii Five-0 remake.
Hawaii Five-0, I don't think that ran very long, but
I never watched it, honestly. But him being in it was kind of a draw. I watched an episode just because of him. So, moving on to Sawyer, my favorite character, played by Josh Holloway, who's slowly getting more famous outside of Lost. Yeah, he was in a Mission Impossible movie for like 5 minutes and then he got killed. But he is the character who, in real life, I would hate. He's an asshole. He's a con man. He's a hick. He has a nickname for everybody. He's very rude to everybody. Very distrusting, constantly causing chaos, and absolutely bringing all the fun to the island and the Great Pod. He's always shirtless, and he's a ripped, handsome man. So he's just such a wonderful character, and he's my favorite character because he has the best story, in my opinion. Because he goes, everybody else kind of goes from being in a bad place to developing to be a better person. He goes from being complete shit to being the best, nicest, kindest character on the island. Like he is until season 6, sadly. Yeah. But his development is wonderful because there's a moment later on in the show where he literally sacrifices his chance to get off the island so other people can.
Yeah.
And that speaks to his development as a character because he is so selfish at the beginning. He's hoarding medicine, he's hoarding books, he's hoarding everything. And then by the end, everybody's coming to him for advice and for help because he becomes a leader. He finds himself like everybody else.
At the end of the show, he probably is my favorite. He definitely just changed so much. Like I said, I really like Jin at the end of the series too. Mm-hmm. But he's so good. His story is great at the end. I mean, his story's great throughout, but the end of his story is awesome.
Yeah, because he kind of connects to everybody too through the backstories. Like that's another fun part. Oh God, that's another fun part about the backstories is eventually their lives all start to connect. You start, maybe it's a spoiler, but you start to you'll see somebody in the background and be like, was that Kate? Was that so and so in this person's background or flashback? And Sawyer appears in quite a few of those and ties in to quite a few more. And it's he's just one of the most intriguing characters just because of how he develops. And then there's that damn body. He always comes out of the water just glistening, and he's so sexy, man.
That's true. That's true. He is definitely a draw, I will say, and he's got a southern draw. I don't think we mentioned. And he got a southern draw. He's definitely a great part of the show, and talking about his development, like because he's a con man, there's new, great, awesome twists that just happen in his story that don't happen in anybody else's. Like, just because in his previous life he could be anybody. Another character that's kind of like that is Kate Austen.
Evangeline Lilly.
She definitely is very famous outside of
the Hobbit movies.
Yeah, that Hobbit movie. That's it. That was the one.
That's the one right there.
She also plays the Wasp.
Oh, that's right. That is right. Yeah, I do actually love her as the Wasp. I think she's
really
amazing as the Wasp.
Yeah.
But my mind immediately goes to what I dislike, which was that weird, just shoehorned romance. I'm okay with the romance. It's just it felt shoehorned in those films.
It did. It did feel shoehorned in that film, and she could have been a fun character if they just left that part out of it. And I don't think that it's specious either. It's not because she got with a dwarf. It's not.
No, I'm okay with that. I want to see that, but make it its own thing. Don't just shoehorn it into the Hobbit.
Yeah, you call the movie Dwelf. And you have Evangeline Lilly, and you could even have that same guy that played the dwarf. I don't remember. I don't even remember which dwarf it was. There was 11 of them. It's hard to keep track.
Yeah, I don't know. Right, I don't remember them either. I'm sorry. I know
anyhow,
token fans are gonna kill us. But no, Kate Austen. I think this is one of the biggest problems with the whole show, is their handling of the female characters. I love Sun, but of that couple, they gave Jen the better stories. They focused on Jen more. They focused on her a lot, which is great, and she has some amazing stories. But I feel like near the end of the show, they kind of just forgot what to do with their female characters. They didn't know where to go with them after a while. I agree. And I think it's most prevalent with Kate Austen.
Yeah, and she kind of, her focus just shifts so much throughout the show too, what it is she's trying to do. She shifts from being selfless to shellfish. She shifts.
That's right, people.
On the
Mutants.
scale of selfishness, back and forth throughout the show, and it just kind of speaks to her life before she got to the island. She's a fugitive. She's always been on the run, always just tried to survive, and it's a good. I like her backstory a lot.
Yeah. Her the reason she's a fugitive is a morally gray area that you can argue whether what she did was right or not. Obviously, I would say it wasn't, but given the circumstances, maybe she found herself with no other option. So I'm willing to give her the benefit of the doubt because she is, I would say, a good person. Yeah. She doesn't intend harm. Harm just happens around her.
That's true.
Well, she intends harm the one time.
The initial.
Yeah. And then it just started a curse where everybody around her just gets hurt.
Yeah. That's kind of how it happens. And, and the reason why they get hurt is because she is on the run. Well, I mean, I feel like that's kind of Kate in a nutshell, except for saying that she is also, Jack's main love interest throughout the show. That kind of waffles, too. Yeah.
She's also the love interest of Sawyer. She gets into a lot of weird triangles with people, and it's just...
she sure does.
And it really ruins my favorite relationship that happens later on. We'll talk that behind the spoiler wall, but it's annoying, man. But the problem is she is an amazingly strong female character. They set her up really great at the beginning. For 3 seasons or so, she is amazing. Very underwritten at times and not always given the strengths that she definitely can handle. But they had a really great character here, and they just kept fumbling it. Because Evangeline Lilly kills it. She's amazing in this role. Yeah. And it's so hard for me to watch any of her roles, except she became typecast for me until, I guess, Marvel.
Yeah, that's true. She did get to break out a little bit. So I think since you mentioned how the show treats their female cast, let's talk about Claire Littleton.
Oh yes,
she's extremely important in the beginning of the show, and then just at the end just drops off pretty much.
Yeah,
they do
really fast too.
I don't necessarily hate what they decided to do at the end, but I don't understand why she was pretty much written off.
Yeah, they made it work, but they changed her so much by the end that I was not on board with it.
Yeah, played by Emily de Revon. I think that's how you say her last name. I could say her first name wrong. Who knows? But anyways,
Yeah.
she's from Australia, and
she's
pregnant when the
she's
plane
Belle.
crashes. What's that? And she's Belle.
She's Belle.
In Once Upon a Time. That is true. That is true. Which, honestly, for like a hot second, I felt like they were doing the same thing in Once Upon a Time with her character.
Right.
I was like, what happened to this actor that they decided that was happening? Maybe something in her personal life. Like, I don't know. Maybe she had a kid or two or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I felt that a lot, honestly, with Once Upon a Time, where I thought they were just kind of like a rip-off Lost.
Yeah.
Because it's like they do the same thing.
She does come back at the... She's pretty prevalent at the last couple seasons. So
good.
They fix it. I don't know what happened in between, but...
That's good. They do the same thing, though, with the flashbacks and everything. Like,
yeah, they do.
Not that Lost.
They do.
Not that Lost was the first to do that, but Lost
Sure.
made it a more common trope among television shows to realize they can develop characters at a different timeline.
Right. Yeah. It works. Is the thing. Like it has a risk of becoming cliche, but I think right now it still can work because, like you said, you can have a large class of people and be able to focus on them better.
Yeah, but there's not. I don't really know if there's much to say about Claire beyond that. She's the pregnant.
I think.
Yeah, because she's very integral to the plot, to what goes on,
especially towards the beginning, for sure.
Yeah.
So,
but
we'll just maybe mention. I would love to jump into all these characters, but we're already running like 40 minutes. So,
right. I think there's let me see how many more there are that I'm interested in, that I want to specifically talk of.
I would love to talk about all of them.
I think there's 4 more specific that I would like to talk about.
All right, let's do it. All right, what are
First, I think it's important because I remember your wife saying this was her favorite character is Saeed.
I love Saeed.
Yeah, played by Naveen Andrews. I mentioned this so many times whenever I watch this, I would love to see him play Jesus Christ.
Yeah,
I think he would make a great Jesus Christ, I think.
Yeah.
Just because of his performance in Lost. Like, he just reminded me of what I think Jesus would look like, and I'm just like, yeah, that guy right there.
He definitely has the hair. I think he still has the hair, so it would work.
Right.
It might, at this point, have a touch of gray, but I'd still love it. That's still be all for it, yeah. I don't know what faith he worships, but or if he would be down for that. But
yeah, he might not be interested. I would definitely, yeah.
He's an amazing actor. I've seen him in some other things, like Sense8. He was in that. It was a short role, but he was good. And what else have I seen him in? But anyways, I really want to see more of him. He's cool.
He's brilliant, and he's another of the characters who, and it's a common theme among Lost. I love him so much that I hate his ending. I hate how they treat his character at the end.
I do too, but it works at the same time.
Yeah. They always make these terrible things work, and it's weird.
He was of the National Guard of the Iraq.
He was one of their torturers. He was very good at interrogators. Maybe is more appropriate.
Well, he did torture as an interrogator.
Yeah, and not to just to state, every country has tortured. It's terrible and it's horrible, and that becomes part of his story is how he copes with the things he's done. And when he comes to the island, he's one of the few characters who's not given a chance to rediscover himself, because he's kind of pushed back into his old ways pretty early on. They kind of turn to him to work information out of people, or to become the investigator, the interrogator character. And it's beautiful how they tell his story, and then it's sad also how they end his story, because there's so much there, but he doesn't get the chance to just rediscover himself, to be somebody new.
Yeah. And at the beginning, he still was one of my favorite characters, and even though he starts going back into his old ways rather quickly, as you said, I still saw him as a more caring character than Sawyer.
Oh yeah, yes,
yeah, and those two kind of foiled each other really well. I feel like at the beginning, if we're gonna use D&D terms, Sawyer's like chaotic neutral, and I would say Saeed is maybe lawful neutral, if not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say lawful neutral is good.
He's definitely not evil.
No.
Yeah.
Well, not until season 6.
Not until.
Moving on from Saeed, another character I think is super important to talk about is Hugo Reyes, Hurley, played amazingly by Jorge Garcia. Everybody loves Hurley. That's even a title of like 2 episodes, I believe.
Yeah, I think you're right.
He's the most wonderful character on the island. He is the kind-hearted, lovable individual. He doesn't, it's hard to make him mad, but people do rely on him a little too much at times.
Right.
And, he's suffering on the island because he is the heaviest individual on the island. He is, I think, well over 300 pounds, probably pushing 400. It's you're stranded on the island. You have no food. You're drinking coconut milk and eating whatever you can get your hands on. So he's struggling, but he never lets it wear on him, on his mentality. He's always this happy guy.
Yeah,
things
around people at any rate. He definitely has some horrible mental breaks, I would say.
Yes.
That he recovers from and becomes a stronger person because of them, which was just another part of his story, is that he did spend quite a bit of time in a mental institution in the real world.
Yeah,
I guess.
He's haunted by bad luck, like that. You're right. He has some horrible mental issues that happen, and I love the way the show focuses on them because he's never sick. It never portrays him as being sick. Yeah. He is. He's a perfectly healthy individual despite his weight, but it's just, it's like he is a happy-go-lucky man who has bad things constantly weighing him down, but he mostly keeps up a good optimism, good hope, that despite all the bad luck that's constantly following him. But I think there's not much development to his character because he starts off as a good person just with bad luck.
Sure. I think he does become much more confident.
Yeah. Yes. He definitely grows.
That's important. Yeah. And also, he learns how to stick up for himself too.
Mm-hmm.
I love Hurley. I do.
He grows into leadership.
I feel like I've said that most of these characters are one of my favorites.
Right. But that's the beauty of this show.
That's the beauty of the show. So I guess we should move on,
Yeah, the last 2 characters are Michael Dawson, and he's played by Harold Perrineau. He is a young black man who just became, he's been a father, but he and his wife had separated, and the son had moved with his mom out to Australia, but she had just tragically died before the show started.
Right.
And he's become sole custody of his kid, Walt. And I don't remember who played Walt, sadly. I didn't really write him down. Because Walt's important for season 1 and then just kind of forgotten, sadly.
It's sadly true. Malcolm David Kelly. He was growing up too fast, so they kicked him off because off seasons he would grow like 1.5 feet.
Yeah. And it's one of the horrible parts about the show because it does take place in like 100 days. It's very short, or at least the first 3 seasons are like 100 days.
Right.
And like you said, Walt was hitting puberty and growing up. It was like, oh shit, fast. What do we do? What the fuck do we do? And Michael Dawson he's a beautiful character for a solid amount of the show. Again, horribly written near the end.
Yeah, I do not like what they did to his character.
It's tragic. Beautiful character. I just wanted to mention him up front. The other one is a little spoilery, but I have to mention him. It's Benjamin Linus.
Yeah.
He is my second favorite character throughout the entire show, played by Michael Emerson, he went on to play, he was in Person of Interest alongside the guy who played Jesus Christ in Passion of the Christ, Jim Cavanaugh, something like that.
Oh.
I don't know. That's probably wrong. But Michael Emerson is an amazing actor. And Ben Linus is the most manipulative and mysterious character in the entire show. You rarely know what's going on in his mind. And he's fucking brilliant. Like, he is so good. One of the greatest villains in the series, and I guess anti-hero after a while.
After a while. I really like his ending. His ending is good.
One of the few characters whose endings I love.
Yeah, it is very good ending. He's definitely one of the strongest characters in the latter episodes, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many characters, guys.
I know.
So
it's so hard.
But the one character who probably is my favorite above all others, who is also, I can't talk much about his storyline, but Richard Alpert. He's awesome.
Yeah.
He constantly shows up. Does he start showing up in the first season? I think he shows up before Ben does.
I think he does show up before Ben.
Yeah, it's really hard to talk about his storyline, but
he's Eyeshadow Man.
Yeah, he's Eyeshadow Man, but he doesn't actually wear eyeshadow.
No, he actually has a defect.
Yeah, he actually is wearing foundation to cover up some of his dark eye nonsense. It's interesting. I don't know what his.
I think it's a defect that makes his eyebrows like very or eyelashes very dark.
Yeah,
something like that.
He does not need to wear eyeshadow because he has dark eyes.
But everybody thought he was the entire time, and he had to come out and be like, "No, guys." I did too.
But anyways, he's an amazing actor. I've seen him in a few things. I know that he was in Bates Motel.
Oh yeah, that's right. I
just want to talk about him too. He's great, but we can't really talk about him.
Yeah, I know we just bored everybody. Well, mostly me too, probably. We just bored everybody for 50 minutes about Cast.
Well, you know what?
We have very little time.
We talked enough about what the show was about, and I feel like they got to know what the show was about by us talking about the characters.
How much time do we have? We got a couple minutes still that we can.
We got tops 20 minutes.
Okay, so let's just peek behind the spoiler wall just a little bit and briefly go through the movie for just a few minutes.
Yeah,
I think obviously before we drop the curtain, we recommend going to see this show if you haven't already. It's again one of our favorites. I want to explain a little bit behind the wall. Things that we were saying up front. But definitely recommend.
We gotta do that. It is hard to not actually talk about this show while we're talking about this show. Go see the flucking movie. The show. We both been calling it a movie. It is a TV show, and I think it's available on a lot of different streaming services. So please go watch it.
Aloha, couch potatoes. Sorry we talked forever about characters and so little about the story. We'll kind of do the same thing behind the spoiler wall. And if you want to skip that, go to hour 1 minute 3. Thank you.
So I think up front, the one thing that I really wanted to talk about was Damon Lindelof, because he is the showrunner for a good majority of this. He's the show is created by, I'm going to get all the names wrong. I know it's J.J. Abrams, and I think it was Carlton Cuse and Damon Lindelof, I think. But J.J. only stayed on for like 1 or 2 seasons. And then after that, it was Damon Lindelof and Carlton Cuse who ran the show.
Right.
And there was so much question as to whether or not they knew where they were going with the show. Like, did they actually have an ending in mind, or were they just bullshitting their way along and hoping to find an ending somewhere along the line?
Yeah.
And eventually, I think around season 3, because this was back when shows were still weekly by week. You know, they came out one at a time. They weren't all binged and streamed immediately. And so there came a time where they split the season up in half. And people got tired of the reruns because it was in the same slot, but it was just a rerun nonstop.
Right.
And so the people would tune in and get pissed off because, oh, nope, no new episode this week. It's a fucking rerun. You know, I remember my mom and dad stopped watching the show, or mom and brother, stopped watching the show because it was reruns nonstop, but I stuck with it. And, you know, it brought up the question whether or not they knew what they were doing because,
right.
You know, it's just they were losing viewership really fast. And they weren't answering questions. You know, when they would come back from the next week, they would wrap up the cliffhanger, but then open it up to like 5 new mysteries. And it's like, what the hell? Are we going to get any answers?
Yeah.
Well, if you stick with the show, you get the answers, people. You know, that's what I like about shows is that they can take their time to tell this. They could string you along for years. And that's part of the beauty of this is that they do string you along for quite a few answers for quite a few years.
Yeah.
But if you stick with it, I think it's worth it for the most part.
I do too. And I also like what's nice about our modern environment is that you can stream this show.
Yeah.
Like you can binge it. I mean, it is a bingeable show.
Yeah, and it works. Even though it was separated by a week in between episodes, it still works because every new episode is a different character focus.
Yeah.
So it feels different. You know, sometimes you're watching the con show of Sawyer, sometimes you're watching the romantic show of Jen and Son.
Yeah.
And so it's just, you know, it's always intriguing, but the problem comes around season 6. And I don't want to put all the blame on Damon Lindelof. Even though I don't like a lot of his style that's become apparent in other works outside of Lost.
Right.
I just feel like a lot of his faith fell into the ending of this story. And most of the show is that finding that comfortable middle ground between science and faith.
Yeah.
And then the ending is very heavily Christianized, but also vague enough to still be okay for like Buddhists and Hinduists and Hindus, I think is but it's vague enough that it's not going to insult anybody, but it's obviously mostly backed by Christianity.
I agree.
And that's not, nothing wrong with that, but the show spent so much time being very open faith and just, what's the right choice, science, faith. Sometimes there's a good middle ground where both work,
right.
And I really loved the show for that until the ending when it just became very prevalent, I guess.
Yeah. I think though, I guess because we're behind this wall, I can mention Jacob. Jacob is kind of the god character of the island. Mm-hmm. But he also wasn't always. And the whole purpose of this happening to these people, big spoiler, is to find the new Jacob because he wants to stop being Jacob.
Yeah. He wasn't the first creator, like as you said,
right.
He wasn't the first protector, like you mentioned, but he was the one who shaped the job as much as it's become
right.
at where the show is at, because what he's protecting is very hard to explain and kind of silly to get into behind a spoiler wall, and it definitely is a huge spoiler of the show.
Right.
But as you mentioned, he has this list of people who can take the job over from him, and that list is our main cast, basically.
There you go.
Or a good chunk of the main cast. And that's why they're the ones the show focuses on rather than all the extras and everybody.
Right.
And part of the story becomes an individual, the smoke monster, basically, I'll say. Part of the story becomes the smoke monster trying to corrupt Jacob's successors.
Right.
And that's where you and I get to the point where we don't like the endings of some of these characters because they get corrupted. They do. Yeah, something happens to their story and you're just like, no, that's not how I wanted their character story to end. Yeah, it's not worthy of the story you've been building.
Yeah. Not that I wanted them to become the protector, but I did want their story to be uplifting in the end, and it was.
Exactly.
With the faith versus reason perspective on this, I think that's prevalent in the show because Jacob is looking for somebody who has both of these qualities. And, in a way that balances out so that the person can both entrust because being the protector is a big job and it requires a lot of people.
Yeah.
So I think it is important for the person in Jacob's position to have faith in people, but they need to have reason in order to see what's going on so that they're not blindly following or trusting these people. And I think that is kind of the point.
Right. Or even just blindly following Jacob's footsteps.
Right.
He kind of wants them to make it their own job
Exactly.
too, like he did.
Yeah.
I don't really know if there's anything else to go into. I guess I think the show is strongest in the first 3 seasons, even though I like a lot of things that happen in season 4 and 5. But I think that's where it starts to go downhill for me.
Though I gotta say, I actually think that season 5 is my favorite. Eventually time travel becomes an element in the show.
Yeah.
And at first they're doing flash forwards of some people who successfully left the island. And then they get
We
back.
have to go back.
We have to go back.
We have to go back.
Kate, we gotta go back. And they make it back. And then the story is told in 2 different timelines. There's the present and also back in the past, like in the 60s. And it's great. I freaking love that shit.
Yeah, it is. It is.
That's
especially because 2 of the characters that are stuck in the past are Sawyer and Jen, and that's where they receive the most development. That's where they become better human beings, really, is because they both are transported to a time and place where they're just like, what the fuck do we do?
Yeah, well,
and
they have to try to have a normal life. Obviously the people in this organization, that's what I'll say, they're scientists on a, I'm giving up too much, I feel like, but they're doing stuff. They're there for a job, but they're also trying to have normal everyday lives because they live there.
Yeah.
And so they kind of have to try to blend into this weird environment. And so they kind of settle a little bit, and it's nice.
Yeah, they take the opportunity to grow.
Yeah.
And it's lovely. And I agree. I think that is one of my favorite seasons. I think personally the first season is probably my favorite just because of what they accomplish in regards to setup.
That's my second favorite because of that.
Yeah.
For that reason. They knew what they were doing. They pounded it out one episode after another, and I just kept on wanting to come back. And they have that carries over into the second season. But
it does.
Also,
and the third season even.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. And it's the greatest hook in television, I think. I can't think of any show that's intrigued me so much that I had to stay through to the end.
Right.
There's a lot of shows I love more than this, I would say, but this is the one that I've watched it 6 times for a reason. It hooks you when you start watching it. When you show it to somebody, you're like, well, I gotta watch the whole thing with you now. Like,
yeah. That first episode definitely, you get so much. I actually heard. I was just listening to another podcast.
How dare you?
I know. They weren't even talking about Lost. It was since I'm going to talk about them, I should say it was Fat Man Beyond, and it was Mark Bernardin, and he was saying that in Lost, right away you get at the end of the episode, anyways. Obviously, they crashed on a plane, but there's polar bears and there's a smoke monster. And I remember what he was talking about now. He was talking about WandaVision, how there wasn't very much revealed in those first couple episodes, which that's a discussion for another time for us.
Yeah, but I think that's all right.
Yeah.
I think shows can tell their stories at complete different speeds, and I think
I agree.
Lost.
I agree.
Yeah.
I had no problem with WandaVision with that. But this show, there's so much more to talk about, man. There's so much more to talk about. I want to talk about all of it, but I do want to mention some other characters that I really enjoyed their performance, like Mr. Echo.
Oh yeah.
Adewale Abaje. I'm sorry. Oh no, he's a hyphenated name, so I definitely got your name wrong. I'm sorry, sir.
Echo is a great character, though.
Yeah, he's a really interesting character, and I like the kind of behind the scenes story of him because his story ended very abruptly. I don't know how much I want to get into his story, but like I guess at some point the actor was like, I don't want to do this character anymore, and left.
Yeah. Which I understand because, again, just like with the women characters, the black characters they're underwritten. You know, they get the worst focus. You know, Michael and Walt kind of just written off and turned into villains. Mr. Echo kind of just written off after a while.
Yeah, it was an odd ending, but his ride up to that point was really good.
Yeah, it was. He was becoming a very unique and interesting character.
Definitely. Like, I think this story was just starting to get stale enough that they needed something like Mr. Echo to keep it going.
Mm-hmm.
But then they get a
Powell.
lot more of Richard. They get a lot more of Richard and Ben, and then Juliet. We didn't talk about Juliet. She's very important to the show.
Yeah. Actually, I think we should talk about Juliet because I mentioned before the spoiler wall that Kate destroys a relationship, and that's right. Juliet and Sawyer. When Sawyer goes back in time, he becomes he falls in love basically with Juliet, who also is transported back in time with them. When they're all just trying to, as you said, try to live these normal lives, and Juliet and Sawyer take that opportunity to live that normal life together.
They sure do.
And it becomes something so strong. She pulls out every good thing in Sawyer. She makes him the best possible person he can be. And then Kate comes back in.
Yeah, fucks all.
And she has to just step in there and be like, "I'm Kate. I'm underwritten, and they've made me obsessed with you for whatever reason. So here I am."
And another weird thing is that, and in the start of Juliet's storyline, she was into Jack. Like, they did the same thing with her as they did with Kate. That's not original at all. I don't know. That part kind of did piss me off. That they, like, I was totally fine with like them, the storyline of them being like, okay, here's this new character, Juliet, and she's also a doctor, and she's into Jack. Jack's into her, and then Kate and Sawyer become a more solidified thing. But no, they did a stupid thing and switched that all around. But I do love Juliet and Sawyer.
Yeah, but you know who's to blame? Damon Lindelof. I guarantee it. Probably not. I actually don't know. I'm very opinionated against Damon Lindelof, so it might not be his decision. But I'm going to put the blame on him.
So, hey, you mentioned Nikki and Paolo. Do you want to drop the curtain and then talk about Nikki and Paolo?
I think I'm also realizing one other character we didn't talk about, so maybe we should drop the curtain and Charlie. We haven't mentioned Charlie at all.
No, we haven't mentioned Charlie at all. So are we dropping the curtain then?
Yeah, let's just say the curtain's been dropped already, and we're just now talking about a redundant thing they already know.
Yeah, okay, gotcha. But
Charlie's a heroin addicted guitarist and famous rock star,
and also a hobbit. Yeah,
Mary Addock.
He's good in this too. Completely
he
different
is.
Character. I have to say, that just shows his range.
And I love his development of going from crazy drug addict to just crazy person. It's really fun. And I root for his character at first, but there comes a moment where I'm just like, and I don't really know when that moment is, but there comes a moment where I just start rooting against Charlie.
Yeah, but then his ending is very good.
Yeah, he gets a heroic ending.
And we appreciate that. And I think it happened early enough in the show, so yeah, don't go into this thinking your favorite Tolkien character is throughout this show because he's not.
But you know, I think we should end on who else is not throughout the show, and that's Nikki and Paolo, the two greatest characters they ever created.
Best. Yeah. So that leads us to our favorite episode.
Is it just titled Nikki and Paolo?
No, that would be hilarious. It's titled Expose.
Expose. Okay, that's right.
Nikki and Paolo, they are secretly international diamond thieves.
Oh my.
They had some diamonds on them on the plane, so they're trying to keep that from everybody. It's a big, big part of the show.
Bastards. It's huge. So huge. In reality, it was a initiative by Damon Lindelof to introduce new characters that was met with supreme disdain by the audience. So many people hated Nikki and Paolo. They were just like supporting members for.
Up. They just showed up. They weren't even on the show. Like, they were not extras before this.
No. Yeah, and then they just became like important characters tagging along everywhere but not really contributing anything. And finally, the show had hiatus, went on hiatus for like 6 months or something. And when they came back, they decided, you know what? Fuck Nikki and Paolo. We're going to make an episode about them and then just be done with them. They're gone. And their ending is magnificent. It is hilarious. It's horrible. And never mentioned again.
I do love bitching about the episode, but the truth is, if it was a completely different television series, it's a pretty good episode. It just does not go with the series at all. They're not important to this show.
And then it's not mentioned again either. What happens is so terrifying and awful, and they just kind of dust it under the rug, and it's like, that's just the secret hidden gem of Lost you'll never have to hear about again. Bum, bum.
Yeah, I think we did it though, man. At the very least, I think that's all the time we should
some bad hat.
I know we could talk about the show for hours and hours.
Bad robot.
Yeah, that definitely gets stuck in your head.
Damn,
J.J.
Abrams.
I do want it to just mention. I don't think we should go into it at all. We never mentioned the hatch.
Ah.
Yeah. There you go. There's a hook for you.
I'm the Green Traveler.
I'm the Faceless Leone. Hope you enjoyed. Safe travels, and good night. Green and Faceless on the Couch is a proud production of Fiction Works 19. If you want to learn more information about us, check us out on Facebook. You can also check out the Facebook and Instagram accounts of Fiction Works 19. Don't forget to like, follow, comment, or subscribe wherever you catch the show. Thank you all very much for listening.